What's up, a cinemashogun here, and the Kansas City Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl. I know these three guys would be happy. Now, I think there were at least three big pass interference calls that should have been called that weren't, but Lamar Jackson kind of choked in some clutch moments as well. And if there's one thing I learned about football, it doesn't matter how good you are in the regular season. When it comes to the playoffs, often it's about who has been there before. So just like with Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes has proven that he can deliver in these championship moments. So even though I didn't want the Chiefs to win, part of me is happy that they did because I know that these three Chiefs fans would be happy. But I could talk about football all day. Let's talk about this case. Now, when it comes to this case, I think there's something that people need to understand. This is not my first rodeo. I fully understand that law enforcement does not have to tell us everything. I understand that they don't even have to tell us anything at all, but usually, more often than not, when dealing with a case like this one, law enforcement does provide more information than they have provided in this case. Now, to be clear, I don't feel like I'm entitled to any of this info. I don't feel like any of you all are entitled to any of this info. But I do believe that the families, at the very least, deserve a little bit more. Communication is key. In any relationship, communication is key. And it's obvious that there hasn't been enough communication between law enforcement and these families. As I've been mentioning since I started covering this story, this happened way back on January 9th. The family had to push and fight to get this story out there. And they have been saying time and time again that law enforcement has not been transparent with them. So when you hear me complain, when you hear others complain about the lack of information, and you hear people complain about how the cops aren't saying anything, it's not necessarily because we think that the general public is entitled to this information. It's because we're sticking up for these families who want answers, who deserve answers. I understand that law enforcement at this point in time can't just sit here and lay out the entire case in front of the families, but they could have been better at communicating with them. Because some of these family members are saying that they've been trying to contact investigators for weeks and they weren't getting anyone to answer the phone. No one was returning their messages, nothing. It's like they just totally forgot about them, put them on the back burner, and told them, hey, it's going to make sense when it makes sense. And they just kind of wrote off this case. So I think it's important for people to understand that when it comes to the information that law enforcement has provided, they basically haven't provided any info. And that's not just the case when it comes to the information that law enforcement is providing media outlets. It's with the families as well. We've had multiple members of multiple different families all coming out saying the same thing, that law enforcement is not being transparent with them. They're not answering their questions. They're not even answering their calls. They're basically being really cold to these families. And in the meantime, as they're brushing these families off, they're making sure that they hop out in the media and say, oh, no foul play here, nothing to worry about. So that's where the criticism is coming from. I personally don't feel like police need to tell me anything. I'll wait, but the families should have a solid line of communication with these investigators. I'm not saying they have to sit on the phone and chit-chat 24/7 all day, but for these families to be trying and reaching out for weeks with nothing, that's not right. At the very least, they should be able to handle this situation in a better way because this is a delicate situation. a very delicate situation. Investigators know that better than anyone else. So even if they're not sitting down providing these families with every single detail, they should be sitting down talking to these families, giving the families the confidence that they need, that law enforcement is doing their job. But they're not doing that. So that's why I speak out. That's why some other people are speaking out, trying to raise awareness about this situation. But I want to roll this news clip really quickly. Before I do, make sure you hit the thumbs up button. Make sure you subscribe. I'm going to roll this clip, and then I'll be right back with more thoughts.
Bureau of Investigation Special Agent. Sir, good morning to you. Couple of things here. The families are talking, and they want answers. Here's the father to Fox Digital. I believe he drugged them, dragged them outside, waited 2 days to call police. He may have done some drugs and stuff in the past, but I do not believe all three of them did drugs and fell over dead in the backyard. Now, the attorney for Willis, the man who owns the home, said this: the number one thing that people need to remember from our point of view is that these were three buddies. These were his three buddies, sorry. If they were in danger, he would have helped them. If he knew they were out there, he would have called the police himself. Anything beyond that is pure speculation. What's your theory?
Well, certainly these folks have been friends for quite a number of years, it's my understanding. But I think there's four key areas here that need to be looked at. The first is the autopsy. You know, I've done quite a few autopsies with forensic pathologists, and so much information can be gathered during that autopsy to not only know the time and date of when the death occurred, but what was in the content of the stomach. So you're going to know what they ate, drank. You're going to know whether or not there was any damage to the body, whether or not there was any blunt trauma. So getting that autopsy report back is going to be extremely important. The second one, and a real key to this case, is toxicology. What is the any kind of alcohol limits? What are the drug limits going to be? Hypothermia sets in rapidly if somebody's under the influence of drugs or alcohol. And the weather at that time was considerably colder. We've been in a significant cold spell through the month of January. This happened at night. They went outside for some reason sometime after midnight, because that's when the last witness saw them alive. And so they went outside, but there was coats found inside the house, and they weren't, and at least one of them wasn't wearing a coat. The third is going to be some unanswered questions about the holes in this case, of whether or not, why did the guy sleep for nearly 50 hours in and out? The cars of the victims were still outside in the driveway. One would wonder why someone wouldn't say, what's going on? Where are my friends at? And do a search for them. And then, last but not least, you have to understand the use of technology and find out when their cell phones were pinging, when they were last used. Yeah. Any information on social media is going to be key to gather information in this case.
Okay, so you answered a lot. Just give me one more answer on this. When do we get the results of toxicology? When do we get the autopsy?
Autopsy results usually come out sooner because the forensic pathologist is actually
this week
seeing it in real time and using their notes. Toxicology could take a month. And Kansas City, Missouri is high crime. They have a lot of death investigations, and the lab is overworked, so it could be even longer than a month. Okay. Hopefully we can get it pretty soon.
Will the autopsy be out this week, sir? Just a quick answer on that.
I don't know.
Okay. Curry Myers, thank you so much. It's a big mystery, and everybody's got a theory, so hopefully we get some answers soon. Thank you, sir, for your time today.
Definitely.
So one of the girlfriends of one of the men who died, she said something in her interview the other day. She said it really quickly. I don't want to get too hung up on it because I don't know if it's just a figure of speech. I don't know if she just misspoke or if she was just saying things. I don't know. But she mentioned that one of the individuals who died, her boyfriend, lived like a mile away from Jordan. That he was within walking distance from home. And that to me just adds like another layer to this story. Because For one, it's hard to believe that these guys just froze to death in the backyard. None of us believe that. And the reason none of us believe that these guys just froze to death is because they're not like stuck out in the wilderness. It's not like they're climbing Mount Everest. They're in their friend's backyard in a residential neighborhood. So they could go inside their friend's house, they can go to a neighbor's house, and their vehicles were even in the front. So they could even go into their car. Now, a lot of people have raised the question, oh, well, maybe they didn't want to drive because they were drunk. Or maybe they didn't want to drive because they were intoxicated, inebriated, whatever, what have you. Knowing that if this is true, and like I said, I don't want to get too hung up on this detail, but if it's true, knowing that at least one of these men lived just a mile or so away, and that they could have, even if they didn't want to use their cars, if they couldn't have gone back into their friend's house, they could have just walked to the other friend's house. That just makes the story just even a tad bit more bizarre. If this story was not bizarre enough to think that this guy, or even these three guys, they could have walked a few blocks. They could have walked a mile away and been at the other friend's home. It's just another detail that makes this situation seem so weird. And I can't wait to know what actually happened here, if we ever do know. But for now, let me know what you think about this down in the comments below. While you're down there, if you're feeling generous, you can donate to the channel via Cash App. I'll have my Cash App in the pinned comment. You could also donate via Super Thanks or for free. You can help the channel by liking, subscribing, ringing that notification bell, and all of that good stuff. But with that being said, I'll talk to you all very soon in the next video.